Andy Bedford.
Here.
Andy Bedford is here. Jerry Ford.
Here.
Jerry Ford is here. Paul Forstein. Paul Forstein is absent. Mark Kobos.
Here.
Mark Kobos is here. Babak Raskafard.
Here.
Babak is here. Ryan Schumacher. Ryan Schumacher is absent. Maggie McCall. Maggie McCall is absent. Nope. And Ryan Schumacher.
Here.
Ryan Schumacher is here. So that gives us 3 regular members and, is that right? Yeah, 3 regular members. And Chair, would you like to appoint the first 2 alternates as voting members tonight?
Yes, we would. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Okay, so can we have approval for the minutes for the October 18th meeting, please? October 18th. So Jerry's moved it. You have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, can we have a voice vote on that? All those approving, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, so it's approved. At this time, we would ask for any public comment that is not on the agenda for tonight. If you have any public comment for non-agenda items. Seeing none, we'll move on. So we'll go ahead with the public hearing for 10570 Grant Creek, the variance. Casey, if you can give us a staff report, please.
Casey Drayton, planner for Missoula County Community and Planning Services, here to present the staff report for the variance request at 10570 Grant Creek Road. The applicant for this request is Cal Enterprises, the property owner, represented by Mark Cooper with Mark Cooper Construction, who is here with us tonight. The legal description of the property is parcel 1A of certificate of survey 6021. The request in front of us is for a 19-foot front yard setback variance from Missoula County zoning regulations. Subject property 10570 Grant Creek Road is zoned CA3 and has a 50-foot front yard setback. The applicant would like to construct a detached accessory building 31 feet from the edge of the road easement or the front property line. The applicant has estimated the proposed structure would then be approximately 51 feet from the developed roadway. This is the proposed garage that you see kind of the top right side of the screen there. Again, it's showing it as 31 feet from the front property line. The project location is located just about up at the top of Grant Creek. I'm sure we're all familiar with Grant Creek Road. So at a closer look, we're just south of where the split is with Bench Road and north of the Snowball Road turnoff, past all those Grant Creek tracks that you see in there. The property is zoned CA3, which is an agricultural residential zoning district. This is primarily for a larger lot residential zoning district with a maximum residential density of 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. Setbacks in the district are 50 feet from all property lines for your primary structure. An accessory building is a permitted use in the zoning district. Accessory structures are not permitted in any primary or secondary front yard setbacks. So the setback for that accessory structure would be 50 feet from the front property line. That's primarily what we're here for tonight. Looking at the existing conditions of the property, the address point on the screen there is right on the single-family dwelling that's located on the property. It does have 2 access points out to Grant Creek Road. Previously, there was a small garage-type structure that was located on the property. You can see it just where I'm hovering with the mouse there to the north of the single-family dwelling. That garage structure has since been removed, and that would be the site of our new proposed accessory structure. It's unknown when that original structure was built. We're unable to locate any information that would lead us any sort of strong evidence to show it. The best thought we have is possibly around the time when the home was built back in 1994, I believe it was. Looking at certificate of survey 6021, you can see we have a 1.534 acre property. This certificate of survey was created by an exemption, so it did not go through subdivision review. Looking at some photos of the existing conditions of the property, as well as if you've looked into the background information in the staff report, you will see a framed out garage structure there on site today. The structure was started without any permits approved, and that goes for building permits and the zoning compliance permit. Through the zoning compliance permit review process, we found that the structure was indicated in the front yard setback, which led to some questions on the measurements, which then in turn revealed that the structure had been started without permits. Building shortly thereafter, the notification issued a stop work order. So as far as my last visual check on the property, the structure did remain as we see it here. This was the condition it was found in when we first became aware of it. So we do have a garage structure that's already under construction. That is the subject of the request tonight. Looking at the site plan that the representative prepared for us, you can see the front corner of that structure at its closest point is 31 feet from the property line. One thing to note here that can be a little deceiving is that the fence on the property, as indicated by these X's, is actually located out in the right-of-way, so it's off of the property. Generally, you would think the fence line would be on or closer to the property line. It's estimated it's about 6 feet away from the property line, encroaching out into that right-of-way. The paved portion of Grant Creek Road then would be about 14 feet from the property line. You can see the existing house down there at the kind of southern tier of this shot. The existing home is just over 50 feet from the front property line. They had a new deck that was put on the front of the house that's indicated on this plan back in 2011. That deck actually encroached into the front setback by about 2 feet. However, there is a provision in the zoning regulations that allow front porches to extend out into a front setback area. So that was deemed compliant at that time in 2011. This garage is quite a bit further forward than that deck or the home is. These are the plans that were submitted with the building plan that was not approved and has yet to be approved. You can see it's a 32 foot by 32 foot garage. It'll be an open garage with 2 garage doors at the south elevation, a couple windows and an access door. So your pretty standard accessory dwelling garage that you may find on residential property. Looking into some of our criteria for review for this case here, I'll touch on a few of the findings of fact that are indicated in the staff report to lead us down eventually to a few conclusions. Looking into the first one, that the proposed variance will not amount to a change of use in the property to a use which is not permitted in the zone. The primary use of the property is going to be maintained as a single-family dwelling. An accessory building or use is also permitted, so we found that this accessory structure is a permitted use in the zone, so it's not changing that at all. That special conditions exist that are unique to the property. We found that this property was created by a division of land exempt from subdivision review and was not reviewed for zoning compliance. You'll find that in a statement on the face of the certificate of survey. It says right on there that this division of land was not reviewed for zoning compliance through that exemption process. What that means in this case is that the property does not comply with the space and bulk requirements for the CA3 zoning district. The zoning district has a maximum density of 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. Here we have a dwelling on just a little over an acre. So the property is much more restricted than your traditional 5 acre or greater property where a 50-foot setback may not be as big of a chunk out of the property. And zoning requires a minimum lot width of 1/3 of its average depth. This property is configured in kind of a unique way, but if you take the measurement at the front setback as required per zoning, the property is configured with a lot width that's approximately 1/5 its average depth as opposed to 1/3. So in other words, if this came in, if this lot was proposed with a subdivision proposal, it would not be compliant with zoning. Therefore, some modifications would have been required. Those subdivision exemptions today are also looked at for zoning compliance, whereas they did not used to be when this was filed. Looking at literal enforcement of these regulations resulting in unnecessary hardship that's not of the applicant's own making. Literal enforcement would require the new garage to be located in an area away from where a garage structure has historically been located. The previous garage structure was erected prior to the current ownership of the property, and new development would be required to comply with zoning standards developed for property configurations that should also meet zoning regulations. As mentioned, that's a non-compliant property with zoning regulations, and that configuration was filed by a previous owner. Looking into some additional criteria, the location, character, and natural features of the property and surrounding properties. This property and surrounding properties are developed in a manner that situates residences and accessory structures near Grant Creek Road. If you've driven up there, primarily all your developments right up on the road corridor. When looking at the cadastral shot of what the property lines look like, most of these lots do stretch a ways out into the distance. Lots on the east side of Grant Creek Road are subject to steep slopes pretty immediately off the road area. So they have a pretty small and restricted building area right up at Grant Creek Road. Properties on the west side are restricted by Grant Creek as well as steep slopes beyond that. Looking at non-economic situations which prevent the utilization of the property for the full range of uses allowed in that zone, we would have to look to the steep topography and thick vegetation coverage, preventing development on a large portion of even the smaller 1.5 acre lot on the east side of the road. In addition, that the drain field required for the septic system eats up a pretty good chunk of the flat backyard area, as there's no sewer services available to connect to. Development of the immediate neighborhood as outlined in the comprehensive plan. Looking at that, we feel that this use would enhance and promote that. When we look at the goals of the plan, one of those is to protect natural resources and wildlife habitat, hillsides, open spaces, while ensuring public health and safety. We feel that the development of an accessory structure provides the ability for safe and secure storage to prevent conflicts with wildlife as a result of human attractants associated with the residential development, and that the urban comprehensive plan identifies heavily timbered slopes posing a greater risk for fire hazard. The accessory structure location is proposed on a flat area where timber has previously been removed. There still is a pretty thick coverage down in there closer to Grant Creek Road, but it's certainly a lot lighter than what you would find once you start to climb the slopes out there. And the development seeks to blend in with the neighborhood by restricting new development to the area that's historically had structures located on it on the property. When we look at compliance with that comprehensive plan, in addition, the zoning regulations, the intent of the CA3 zoning district is to provide for low-density residential development in an open and rural character in areas best suited for such purposes while providing environmental protection. Cluster development is encouraged. We would find that this would be a clustering of the structures on this individual property, keeping that garage close to the single-family dwelling that's there, the driveway, and the access out to Grant Creek Road. As mentioned, it all has been previously developed because of that garage and the access and any other facilities around it where the owners have been utilizing it for outdoor storage or anything. You can see that the yard area has been used and developed. Looking at the overall density, yard height, and other requirements in the zoning district, the accessory structure is proposed to meet all applicable zoning requirements other than the minimum front yard setback requirement. The primary use of the property doesn't meet the overall density established in zoning. As we mentioned, that's a result of that certificate of survey being filed. Looking at effects on neighboring properties and their occupants, no adverse comments have been received from neighboring property owners. And the request is for a variance to the front yard setback adjacent to Grant Creek Road. The structure would be no closer than permissible to adjacent properties on either side, limiting adverse impacts to those closest to it. And in fact, it's located fairly centrally on the property, just closer to the road than the zoning regulations would call for. Looking at site plan amenities intended to promote the appearance of the proposed use and mitigate adverse neighborhood impacts. One of those is that the development's designed to be discrete and proposed to blend with the natural environment by preservation of the mature trees and existing vegetation along Grant Creek Road. If I jump back up, you can see that there are a handful of trees buffering that garage and Grant Creek Road. And another site plan design amenity that we felt played in the favor of this garage is the fact that the fence is located closer to Grant Creek Road than the property line, which gives the average onlooker the false appearance that that fence would be on the property, indicating that the garage would be further back from the property line than it actually is. Looking additionally, two posters were placed at the property along that fence line on Grant Creek Road. As mentioned, no adjacent property owners or anyone else has inquired or commented on this. A notice was sent to Missoula County agencies for comment. Two agencies returned a no comment. No one else replied to it. So we felt that no agencies had any real comment on it. It is worth noting, while Public Works didn't comment, they do have a stop work order issued for this. Contingent on the outcome here tonight. They're waiting on the zoning compliance side. I believe, as far as I know, most of the building permit requirements would be okay for them, but again, I can't verify that. That would be up to them to review for their codes and regulations. With that said, staff is recommending that the Board of Adjustment approve a variance from County Zoning Regulations Section 2.08B to allow a 19-foot reduction to the required 50-foot front yard setback for the detached accessory structure submitted in this variance application. The approval would be subject to staff's recommended conditions. The first condition is that the setback reduction shall only apply to the structure proposed on plans provided in this variance application. No alteration or enlargement of the structure may occur within 50 feet of the front property line other than routine maintenance deemed necessary for structural stability and upkeep. This is to ensure that there's never an addition to add a third bay or anything onto this garage, or to add onto the house and saying, okay, we have this additional space now, let's put a big addition on the front of the house or anything. That would keep all development pushed back into an area that would be compliant with the zoning regulations as they stand with the 50-foot setback. And the second recommended condition by staff is that a statement from a licensed surveyor is required prior to zoning compliance permit approval to verify that no element of the structure is closer than 31 feet to the front property line at the nearest point. Staff felt this condition would be appropriate as the property has not been surveyed. These are coming off rough measurements. As far as we know, the property pins haven't even been identified truly. We've had a few conflicting site plans submitted to us, which raised some curiosity in this property in the first place, which led us to go out to take a look at it and brought us this variance request ultimately. So because of the conflicting information we've received and no verifications or no indication as to where the measurements are truly being taken from, we're recommending that a licensed surveyor certify that the information we're looking at and staff's recommending approval of is actually in fact accurate. That is what I have for the staff report this evening. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
So thank you very much, Casey. Anyone have any questions for Casey? I've not seen any. I have a couple. I mean, do we have a sense of when this garage was demolished off of this existing foundation?
The applicant could probably identify that for us.
Okay.
The only information we have is when we found out there was a new application in the queue for a new garage that said that they were going to demolish where the old one had been demolished, but when that happened, we don't know.
Okay, so, thank you. No other questions? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I have one maybe for Casey. It's that condition 2 you have on there. I wonder, I can understand there's been some confusion in the site plan, but the way that condition is stated, and if we don't know where the property is, it seems like the intent of this variance is to reconstruct the garage wherever it may be. If it's 28 feet and 6 inches from the property line, I don't know that it really, that, there doesn't seem to be anything magic about that number, and I'm concerned that that condition, the way it is, could be problematic if they go out and find it's not 31 feet.
Yeah, certainly, and we discussed that internally, and what that ultimately ends up linking back to is the recommended motion that we're requesting. I mean, we could just request an open-ended variance to the front yard setback for just as it appears today, and it would be a very general motion. The request that came in had the measurements on it, so we felt that tying it to to allow a 19-foot reduction, then because we're making a motion for that, we should have some sort of information to support that that is the case. And we just don't have that at this point in time. We could certainly generalize all of it to allow the structure as it stands at some unknown location, but we don't really know where.
Maybe the applicant or something could speak to that. I don't know. I can understand you took their information and that they provided and you're giving them what they asked for, so maybe they're confident in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same question, but I was going to wait for the applicant, mainly because, I mean, that's kind of the way that condition is written is, again, pretty rigid, and if it's 6 inches different, less, then we're going to be back hearing this again for, 6 inches or 3 inches or whatever, if there's a difference of the survey. So
Yeah,
that is a concern, and don't want to waste anyone's time if we don't have to.
No, yeah, and we understand that that is a very firm condition, and in this case, we were getting kind of a runaround with site plans, and we felt, this is what they're bringing to us, this is what they're certifying as the applicant, and you know what, at some point, they've got to be held to something, so
That's understandable.
making
You
that.
bet, you bet. So, seeing no more questions, can we hear from the applicant at this time? If you can identify yourself and
Yeah.
spell your last name so that the clerk can understand who you are and make it for.
Mark Cooper, Cooper. So I guess the answer to your question would be that fence line, like Casey had mentioned, it is actually off the property boundary, according to the land survey. And so it's actually 36 feet from the closest corner of the garage. We're 51 feet to the road, and there's a 20-foot easement from the road easement. So if we're 51 feet from that closest corner to the road, subtract that 20 feet, figured it was 31 feet to the property line, or I guess you'd say to that easement, that 20-foot easement for the road there. So I guess that's where the 31 came into play. So.
Well, I'm getting the impression that you're just kind of using the math deductively and assuming the road is somewhere and you went 20 feet from the road, but you may find the road isn't where you think it is. I don't know.
Okay.
Have you had a surveyor out there?
I have not. No, I have not. I don't believe the property owners have either.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so my concern is that the road isn't centered in the right of way, and then you're,
Yeah, I think we just could be, either we're going to have to modify the condition or we're going to have to give some additional leeway or something in order so we avoid having this come back again if we're really going to provide a variance. So I think it's incumbent on the applicant at some point, if we're going to, I think it would be wise for us in some ways to put a restriction saying that, hey, we need to make sure this gets surveyed so we know where it is. In my opinion, and I'd like to hear other people's thoughts about that. But my biggest concern is, is when was the garage demolished?
So when I showed up, I'm the contractor, by the way. When I showed up, the garage was 31 feet from the road. So if we're 51 feet from that closest corner to the road, subtract that 20 feet, figured it was 31 feet to the property line. So I guess the answer to your question would be that that is a very firm condition, and the homeowners had kind of been picking it apart all summer, and October of this year, I don't know exactly the date, I finished demolishing it. I'd say early October, first or second week of October. And I mean, honestly, I jumped the gun, as you guys know. But when I put that closest corner, when I put the foundation in there, I took that closest corner from the existing garage and used that as a pinpoint, you know, assuming it was fine, which, you know.
So that begs the next question for me, which is, it sounded like you said you may have modified the foundation. So did you increase the size of the foundation or change the configuration of the foundation?
Yes,
you were
it's
on site?
slightly increased. I don't know the dimensions of the old structure. However, we did increase it, but that closest point is where the homeowners wanted it. And, you know, I thought I was playing it safe by going off that closest point.
So to
There.
clarify, that 31-foot point, that was where an existing corner
Yes,
of the
yes,
existing garage was?
yes.
And that's, you haven't gone any closer toward the right of
No,
way?
I have not.
Okay.
So the expansion of the footprint was in a different direction? Other directions? You said you expanded the footprint of the... from the
No, I did not. It's very similar to the exact shape, and you know, I took that corner, you know, and just went with it, and you know, I think whoever built it there must have done it to kind of fit the driveway as well, you know. So they basically the homeowners wanted the old garage removed and this new one placed in the exact spot, you know. So really just made it a little bigger, so, but going the opposite way.
So any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So at this time, I think we need to talk about these conditions. I'd like to hear other thoughts, like from Andy. You know, do you think that this condition for having the licensed surveyor would be a good requirement to put on us? Part of the reason for me is I was asking about the foundation and all is that if we're building in a garage where there was a garage until October of this year, and the location and size is similar or the same size as what it was there before, that's what I was trying to make sure I understood. I can see why there was an assumption that would meet the setback requirements or that it was okay to build on it, irregardless of the permitting situation. You know, building without a permit is not a legal way to move forward. So my concern was that trying to make sure that I understood that really clearly, so that to me there's some logic in you know, allowing to have a garage be replaced is really what we're talking about. But I guess I am really concerned about the one condition that says, you know, we have to have it at 31 feet, or otherwise we're going to be back here revisiting this thing again. So I'd like to hear some comments on that if you guys have any opinions.
Well, I'd be in favor of requiring a survey.
Andy, what do you think?
Conceptually, I don't have a real, I'm supportive of the variance to have an existing structure. There's a lot of constraints on the property. It's got pretty tough geometry. I mean, I just did a quick sketch of your 50-foot setback, you know, from what this front lobe, and the existing house is entirely out, and so it's going to be hard to fit that in there. So I'm supportive of the concept of the variance. You know, you obviously probably shouldn't have been constructing without, and I've seen some situations go really bad when people don't know where the property lines are, really bad. And it sounds like you don't know where that is. So I think it might be good to know, and most likely the garage is definitely on the property, hopefully. I've seen some where they thought they were on the property and weren't even on their property at all, though. But I don't think that's the case here. But I am concerned. I have no problem with the 31 foot on there and go forward and have a survey, and then you'll get a survey, know where your property is. It just may be, you may be back to the board possibly.
Okay.
It's similarly, I guess the thing I'm a little bit concerned about, that makes me more concerned about maybe requiring a survey, is the fact I hear there's maybe been some expansion now as well. Before I understood it to be an exact replacement of that ramp, but now I think I've heard it's maybe expanded.
Yes.
So
It's
maybe
expand,
no closer, but more
right.
side to side, if you will. So it may not have gotten any closer, but I guess if we hold you to a number and if it's expanded into that, that's not going to be helpful. You
Mhm.
have to come back.
Yeah.
If, well, I guess he's already started the structure. I mean, I guess that's the risk you take when you start building. I mean, in theory, if it was 31 feet, he could just move the structure. Obviously, he'd have to demolish what he's put up. I mean, I'm not saying that's what he should do, but that is one way to view it, is that you find your 31-foot spot and you say, okay, this is the corner, and, we're 3 feet over, or we're, 2 feet. If it's 6 inches, maybe he comes back. I mean, that, there are.
Alternative to not coming back, I guess.
Yeah.
Draw the line in the sand and you go with that line.
Yeah, I mean, just plain devil's advocate, so.
So I'm also on board conceptually with, it makes sense to allow the proposed garage to be built if it's in the same place. It doesn't seem like it's adding any harm or having any negative impact on the neighborhood. It's utilizing the site well. But not knowing where the property lines are could cause a huge issue in my mind, and that 31 feet, from what I'm hearing, is completely arbitrary. It's to a fence line, but we don't know exactly where the fence line is. It's to the side of the road, but we don't know exactly where the side of the road is positioned in the right-of-way. So, I think it'd be smart to have a survey. I'm indifferent, though.
Just to throw another thing out there, I mean, I guess we could table this, and instead of, still have to come back, we could request, we could prove it like it is and hope that it's correct, but to speak to what, you were just addressing, Ryan, that there are a lot of uncertainties. We can, hope the uncertainties are false and that everything is correct, or that they're extremely minor, or, we can, confirm everything before. I'm not saying I'm just, again, throwing it out there like.
Or the other option is to just do what we said, what the staff recommendation is, and say approve it at 31 and say, okay, if it's not, then you're gonna have to come back. And that may be, in the end, a good alternative, because either way, we're gonna be looking at somebody coming back. If we give a 31 and they survey it and it's not 31, they're coming back. If we ask them to verify it and come back, they're coming back. This way, at least he would have the latitude that if he does get the survey done, it does prove that it's within the parameters that are given in the variance, then he can just continue to move forward.
So I tend to agree with that. One thing that would be interesting, just for my knowledge, is there a reapplication fee if this is approved and he has to resubmit? Because then it might be smart for him to withdraw and resubmit after he does a survey.
I would say generally yes. If it's going to be a new request coming in, we're going to be looking at a totally new variance request. If you were to take it as it stands tonight with the recommended conditions, because the request was notified to adjacent property owners as a 19-foot reduction, and now there's some sort of a record that that's what was requested, that's where it's believed to be at, then he would have to submit a new application, which gave us the correct answer when he came back with that application. If the hearing was continued on the alternative, we could announce the date tonight in which it would be continued to. He would essentially be providing us additional information. Anybody who is following this hearing then could kind of keep up with it because of that record. That's the way I would see the process moving forward. So there's, I don't know if one way is better than the other, but there's certainly two different ways you could take that forward.
I feel like it's incumbent on us to really ask the applicant, you know, do you have a preference? I mean, I want to be fair to you in every way we can, but the two options to have is approve it as is, in my mind, or continue this and give you some time to get back to us or get back to staff and let them know what is the setback requirement. And then again, if it changes, then there may have to be, you know, because that's going to change. If that changes to be less, then again, we're going to have to start over. Or is that what you're saying? Or this could be continued to a later date, and we would take it down for what it is at that time, as far as the variance.
So you could either require it to be at or greater than 31 feet from the property line, in which case, if that survey came in tomorrow, essentially the permitting process would continue to move and he could get his permits. There'd be no coming back. If he was to determine that that garage was actually some lesser distance from the property line, then essentially he wouldn't be able to meet that condition of approval, which therefore he would have to make a new variance request and or move the garage to 31 feet.
Can we,
Go ahead, Andy.
Does the 31 feet count eaves? Overhangs?
No, they'd be measured to the structure itself.
Okay.
Yep.
Is this one picture here, and I know it's is that a picture of the old structure?
No, that's an adjacent property down
Okay.
the street, I think, on the west side of Grant
So
Creek
the
Road.
only way about and this is less about the process maybe of going forward, but there was, just trying to verify the size, wasn't there an aerial of one of the structure on one of those aerials?
Yeah, I can jump. So you can see it here. It was kind of like a lean-to type structure from what I could see from an older Google Earth kind of drive-by. We don't have any photos of it. Like I said, there's no documentation with any old zoning compliance permits to show this structure.
Was there a slab?
Yes.
I believe so. And I don't, when I talked to Public Works initially on this to let them know what I found when I was on site, because there was an existing slab there and the original plans called for building this on the slab, and then there was clearly some new slab poured. They had talked about potentially like x-raying it to find out if the old slab's still down there. You could find out if this garage is truly lined up on the corner of that old slab. That may be a way to move forward to ensure that this garage is where the old one was and get rid of a measurement. But I don't know if that old slab's even there.
Yeah.
If the applicant may be able to answer. He was there while they were pouring, so.
It's not there.
Okay.
It was all torn out by T&M Trucking and Excavation.
I guess I just had one question, one more for you. Are you comfortable with this variance and the conditions as proposed?
Can you go back to the survey? I went out there and I measured over and over again, and if this survey is still accurate here, I would be totally comfortable with saying it is 31 feet. I think it's actually maybe even a little more than 31 feet from the property line. Just, because I believe I was 38 or 36 feet to the fence line. And looking at the survey, I'd say, it's maybe the fence maybe 3-4 feet off of the property line. And I measured over and over again, making sure that, you can see there, the property line shows it's pretty parallel to that, the road, and I was going right off the asphalt. Like you say, I don't know exactly what they consider the edge of the road, but it is 51 feet from that closest corner to the asphalt.
So is the short answer yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'm inclined to approve it as is, and then would be on his burden. He's gonna have to prove it's 31 feet away, like the variance says. That was the only question I had about the eaves, is if he had measured to the wall line and then the eaves encroached or something, and that was another problem, but.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. If the applicant feels comfortable moving forward that way, I think that we can, if someone wants to make a motion, we can probably dispatch this relatively quickly.
Would it be possible just to table it till he had a survey?
That is something that we could do, but we're still coming back, and so in order to try and keep from holding him up, he just said he feels comfortable that it's going to work within the 31. I think we go ahead, unless there's some reason we would not want to do that. I believe that, I think we're ready to make a motion.
I think it's ultimately his call, and he's comfortable, so let's make, unless someone thinks otherwise.
Jerry, we're planning on making the motion per the staff recommendation at this time, I believe. Is that?
So that's requiring the survey.
Is it requiring a survey, or it's just requiring a statement? I mean,
It's a statement from a licensed
surveyor,
surveyor.
so presumably the surveyor would survey it before he or she would give that statement, so.
That
there'd
is
be some
correct.
work, yeah.
Yep.
Well, he didn't say when you were measuring it, what you used for a starting point. Did you find the prior survey where it was? Or did you just guess from the road?
I'm sorry,
Well, it had to be surveyed at one time. I just wondered if you found any of the survey stakes.
well, what we found out too was whoever built the old structure, they never got a permit when they built it, whenever they built it. So it was not on a survey. However, we're taking a guess that it was built sometime around 1994 when the house was built. But it was not on a survey, so.
I guess maybe what Jerry might have been asking, it looks like there were a couple pins or rebar that were located on the survey. Did you measure off of those?
I did see the pin. Yes, I saw the pin in the corner there, and I'm fairly confident in my measurements that it is it's right there. And actually, I believe I truly do believe it's actually slightly greater than 31 feet. I thought we were kind of playing it safe too by saying 31 feet. I'm confident that it is. So.
I think at this point, hearing, about the garage's history, that we can disregard that, and we just go, in my opinion, with, the staff's recommended motions. So I'd be comfortable making a motion if everyone else is ready. All right, so I move that the Board of Adjustment approve a variance from Missoula County Zoning Regulations, Section 2.08B, to allow a 19-foot reduction to the required 50-foot front yard setback for the detached accessory structure submitted in the variance application. The property is legally described as Parcel 1A of COS 6021 in Section 16, Township 14 North, Range 19 West, PMM, and zoned CA3 agricultural/residential. This approval is based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law found in the staff report and public testimony, and is subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, the setback reduction shall only apply to the structure proposed on the plans provided in this variance application. No alteration or enlargement of the structure may occur within 50 feet of the front property line other than routine maintenance deemed necessary for structural stability and upkeep. A statement from a condition number 2, a statement from a licensed surveyor is required prior to zoning compliance permit approval to verify that no element of the structure is closer than 31 feet to the front property line at the nearest point.
Can I have a second?
I second the motion.
Have a motion and a second. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Jerry Ford,
Yes.
Mark Cobos,
Yes.
Babette Grosskefard,
Yes.
Andy Bedford.
Yes.
Passes.
So you have your variance. Thank you. Thanks, Casey, for the explanation as well.
Thank you.
So at this time, do you have any other old business? None? Any new business or staff announcements?
Yeah, we do. I think, Jamie, do you want to come up and, yeah, you're all set here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
We'll,
guys.
send
Thank you.
some information.
Hi, just a couple staff announcements. Larry is going to be resigning, so as of January, that will be effective. Babbitt is going to be moved up from first alternate to a regular member to fill Larry's term. Jerry and Ryan are going to, or were reappointed, correct? You haven't gotten your letter yet? I think you should be. So that should be coming soon. And then in February, we're going to start holding these meetings over in room 151 of the county courthouse. So if everybody that plans on attending in February, if you can come a little bit early, just so we can work on the setup and make sure that everything works correctly. We've got all the monitors working and everything. Staff would really appreciate that. We're, with Larry resigning, we are going to need to do new appointments for chair and vice chair. So I think in January, if we plan on doing that, we will have a meeting, correct, Casey?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. And then, as I mentioned, probably when Casey took over the board, that we were going to be working on bylaw amendments. So we are still going to be doing that. I just haven't had time. Really hoping to get that done in January, maybe February if I have to. And as part of that, we are going to be considering having the chair of the board sign the approval letters. We're finding that we should be including the findings of fact and conclusions of law that go along with the approval letter. Right now, we haven't been doing that, so we want to include those findings of fact and conclusions with the approval letter, and we also want the chair to be signing on that letter. That way, if there's amendments to the findings that were made on the floor, we know that the chair acknowledges those changes and agrees with them, and then we can issue that letter to the applicant. So that's one change that we're considering. The other one is that we would like to see some term limits stated in the board bylaws. All the other county boards have term limits. For whatever reason, this board never has. As to what those may be, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to look into the planning board minutes or planning board bylaws and see what they have and look to that as an example. And then just kind of going back to findings, obviously the staff person, they prepare findings for the reason and position that staff prepares their motions. So if the board decides to detour from that, and if you do a denial on something that we were recommending approval for, you'll want to make some findings while you're here in the meeting so that those then can be added to the record as to why that decision was made. Same thing if you do additional conditions or modify the conditions. You just want to make sure that those findings are very clearly stated for the record, and that, again, we can pass those on to the applicant. So, any questions? Thanks, Jerry.
Well, and I agree that there's been some times where we've gone away from the staff recommendations, and it's always not been made. I don't know if it's been made at the record enough of what the findings were or what the change was on the board's decision of why. A good example is potentially the tiny house one where we said no on the reduction in the parking. I believe it was discussed of why, but maybe there's some other things that need to be more finalized on that to make sure it's clear.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just helpful for staff in the event that anything ever goes to litigation. It's that much more clear too. It's just good practice. So.
Right,
Anything
thanks,
else,
Jamie.
Casey? Yeah,
I don't think so.
nothing? We've got one coming up in January.
2.
Oh, two in January?
We have a variance request and a special exception permit hearing in January.
And we're also bringing a new staff person on in January. It's likely that that person will end up taking over the Board of Adjustment for Casey, just because we're going to put him doing more subdivision planning, so. And her name is Lauren Miller.
All right. That's it for tonight.
Yep.
I guess we can adjourn. Okay, thank you all. Thank you.